Welcome to our posts. Today we will see stories of r/am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for telling my 28 fiance, 29, that I could not rely on her in a life or death situation? I have what I think is a very good sense of situational awareness. I'm a quick thinker and I tend to not panic in dangerous situations. My fiance, on the other hand, is the exact opposite. If I'm being nice, I would say she doesn't have any awareness of danger. If I'm being honest, I would say that she has the survival instinct of panda raised in captivity. She had no sense of danger around her, doesn't constantly examine her surroundings for things that could be dangerous, and when things are bad, her reaction is to panic and scream. Friday we went out on a friend of mine's boat and we got into a dangerous situation. We were anticipating light rain, but we ended up with a downpour, high winds, and high waves. While me and the other men there were trying to strap things down and keep the boat from capsizing. My fiancée screamed and cried for dear life. She was in hysterics. And I get it was a scary situation, but her yelling and screaming that we're all gonna die and for God to save us, and literally crying saying that it's my fault that she's on the boat since I asked her to come with. None of the other girlfriends or wives were doing this, just her. I'm sure the other women there were just as scared, but tried to keep it in for the sake of the men doing something about it. The downpour was really bad for about 15 minutes. So 15 minutes of wailing while we are doing everything we can to keep things alright. We made it back safe with little more damage than a few spilled White Claws. On the car ride home I told my fiancée that we needed to talk about how she was behaving during the crisis. Not only was it incredibly embarrassing in front of my boys, but it was distracting, unhelpful, and telling. I told her that, today proved to me that if I was in a life or death situation, I could not rely on her to be any help or do anything except make things more stressful. I said she needed to learn how to not panic and be helpful. She got unbelievably mad. She said she thought she was going to die and had reason to freak out. I told her that all of us were scared, but none of us were as ridiculous as she was. We argued the entire ride home and she is still pissed off at me. I think I was right to say this, especially since we plan on spending our lives together and raising a family, and I can't be the only level-headed one. Am I the a-hole? Next story. Am I the a-hole for asking my brother to pay $30,000 for my engagement ring? I hosted a family dinner over the weekend. My brother brought my nephews, 4 and 8, over as well. I used to wear my engagement ring all the time, but lately I keep it in my walk-in closet and mainly wear it for special occasions. While I was cleaning up the dinner table, my nephews went to go play while the adults were still in the outdoor patio and outdoor kitchen area. My brother was not supervising his kids. During this time, my nephews went into the master bedroom without anyone knowing and started playing with everything, including my engagement ring. When we came to look for them, they panicked because they know they aren't supposed to be upstairs, ran into the master bathroom and flushed my ring. We called a plumber in case it was somehow in the U-trap of the toilet and not actually gone. But nope. Unfortunately, it was gone for good. We still had the original receipt, so I called my brother. I emailed him a scanned copy as proof of the cost and asked him to reimburse me for the ring my nephew flushed. Immediately he started calling me an a-hole because we were family and he was just a child. He has refused to repay the cost of my ring. I told him I will be taking him to court for this, and now my entire family is blowing up my phone saying family shouldn't sue each other and just let it go. Next story. Am I the a-hole for embarrassing my sister's friend and making her feel unwelcome? My sister, cousin, and a couple friends came over last night after work. My sister brought a friend of hers I'd only met a few times that I've never had an issue with. At one point I went to the bathroom, and the ladies were in the living room, calmly enjoying wine. When I came out, my sister's friend was in the kitchen, arguing with my son. I asked her what she was doing. She said my son went into the kitchen to get food, and she told him to wait until I came out of the bathroom to ask me for permission. I stared at her for a second and then said, "Who the F are you? You don't live here." "He does." "Who are you to tell him he can't go in his own kitchen?" She looked surprised and said she was trying to be helpful. I repeated my question of why she thought it was okay to tell someone they can't use their own kitchen when she's a guest in someone else's house. She dodged the question and then brought up that she's a teacher, which isn't even relevant, and sometimes kids try to get around rules. I asked her what that has to do with anything. I then asked who even gave her permission to go in my kitchen. She said she followed my son in. I said, so you think my son needs permission to go in his own kitchen, but you can go wherever you like in my house without invitation? So you have more rights here than he does? She said she didn't feel welcome anymore and was leaving. She went back in the living room, grabbed her bag and walked out. My sister asked what happened, and I explained that she had a disagreement with my son. My cousin and some of the other ladies said they thought it was strange she followed him into the kitchen and had been wondering why she did that, and thought her motive was weird as hell. My sister and a couple other ladies said her behavior was perfectly normal and I was unnecessarily hostile to her. My cousin said, but why would you confront a child you don't know instead of saying something to the aunt who's right here? That's so weird. Everyone but my sister acknowledged that part was weird, and we all moved on. Later, my sister confronted me privately and said she was upset I chased off her friend. She said she really likes this woman and that I was way over the top in the way I spoke to her. I can be a little extra when it comes to defending my kid, so was I an a-hole? Next story. Am I the a-hole for ordering nachos even though it deeply offended and set off my brother-in-law's autism and sensory issues? Background: my brother-in-law is 32, wife and I are 25, and while I don't doubt that some of his issues are real, autism, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, set point obesity, it is my distinct impression that he exploits people's perception of these things to be a controlling prick. In the family, saying such things is completely forbidden, however. We offered to take my mother-in-law and father-in-law out for Easter dinner so no one has to cook. The timing offered was strategic since we knew brother-in-law had planning on watching TikTok livestream of some 19-year-old influencer who was blowing up right now, but I guess either he got the time wrong or she cancelled early, so my heart sank when he was coming along because I knew there was going to be drama. We went to a place famous for bar food and I ordered nachos. My wife begged me to order something else, but she wasn't direct with me about the problem and I didn't get her hints. As soon as I took my first bite or nachos, my brother-in-law started shrieking like a child and throwing a little tantrum that she crunch was killing him and he's going to lose it because black olives don't belong on nachos because they are from Spain, not Mexico. My wife, mother-in-law and father-in-law told me I really screwed up and that I was making him uncomfortable. In a moment of pure honesty, I told them that the list of not allows around Brian is so long and tucking ridiculous that I can't keep up. My wife said she tried to tell me. I said, no, you didn't tell me, you avoid around it like we do every time this creep ruins a family function. Brother-in-law, father-in-law and mother-in-law got up and left, leaving us with the bill, and needless to say, things between me and my wife have been tense ever since and we really haven't spoken. I am absolutely the a-hole for my choice of words after he freaked out, and I get that, but I also think things needed to be said. But my question is, am I the a-hole for ordering the nachos? My wife says I should have known since she's sure she's told me, and I had to have noticed that they never have chips around because his misophonia can't handle the crunch. Am I the a-hole here? Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my coworker that my solo picnic is as important as her daughter's recital? I, 29 female, started working at a new company 8 months ago. I was headhunted specifically for the role I have, which gave me enough power to negotiate my contract like I wanted. One of the things I managed to get was a clause that prohibited my employer from contacting me outside work hours. If it is a true emergency, then they can send me an email. Otherwise, they can't even send me a text. Furthermore, I have a separate work phone that I shut down at 5 on the dot, then turn on at 9 a.m. Another thing is that I don't work OT. I am very efficient, so my work is done by 3 p.m., 5 p.m. if we have an emergency. I also take my whole lunch break outside the office, and my coffee breaks away from my desk. My coworkers are not the same, they tend to socialize during work hour, and have work left for afterwards. They sometimes ask me to help, but I always decline by saying that I have plans. I don't go into details, I just say that I have plans. These plans are 99% of the time just include going home, reading books, or sleeping. But that is my personal time. Monday, a coworker asked me if I could stay a bit later to help her out. Apparently she was late with some essential work, but had to be done by that night, because she had to attend her daughter's recital at 6. I said that I was sorry, but that I had plans. It was a nice day, so instead of going home, I just went to a park to read while breathing some fresh air. brought some fruit and bubble tea, and made a picnic out of it. My coworker found me there, and she was pissed. She said that I could have helped her if I didn't have plans. I said that I do have plans, this impromptu picnic. She said that it wasn't as important as her daughter's recital. So I said that for me, it was even more important than her daughter's recital. She called me an a-hole, and some of my friends agree. So am I the a-hole? Next story. Am I the a-hole for yelling at my ex and telling her to stop trying to make our kids perform for her after the death of her husband? My ex-wife and I share 2 children. Our daughter is 13 and our son is 11. She was remarried for 7 years and has 2 children with her late husband. He died a week ago. My kids were not close to the man. He was a hard man and the kids found him overly strict, and I agree, and they didn't like being around him. The relationship at best was strained, but they confided in me over the years that they hoped their mom would leave them. She loved the guy though, and when he died last week, she was a mess. Our kids were with me when it happened, and she wanted to see them, so I brought them over. They comforted their mom and she told them, repeatedly, it was okay to cry, it was okay to miss him, that they were all going to miss him. The kids said nothing. She kept repeating it. I told her I thought the kids got it. When the kids saw their mom again, she was halfway through planning the funeral and asked if they would be able to do a reading or something for the funeral. The kids said they wouldn't be able to. She was with them a while and then said, since they weren't crying much, maybe they could take a reading and see how they did on the day. Kids told me about it when I spoke to them and they asked if I could talk to their mom. I told my ex not to force the reading. The funeral day came. I showed up for my kids. They were hanging back with me a lot, and they told me their mom kept watching them, which I witnessed myself. For the funeral I sat behind them since she wouldn't let them sit with me. She told us that all her husband's kids should be seated up front, and I didn't have the heart to tell her they weren't his kids on the day of her husband's funeral when she was such a mess. So I bit my tongue and supported my kids. It was after the service when everything went down. The kids came to sit in my car for a while and we were laughing about something. Ex came over and asked how they could be laughing when they had just buried their stepdad and why did they show no grief at all over the loss of the man who was part of their lives for 7 years. She said it was almost like they were glad he was gone. She told them they should have been looking way more somber after he passed. She told them if they really didn't care, they clearly needed help because her husband loved them. I stepped in and told her to lay off the kids, they were kids. She told me to stop interfering in how she parents our kids. My daughter ended up getting mad at her mom and told her she wasn't sad he was gone, he was in crap and she had always hoped she would leave him. She stormed off and my son followed. Ex was going crazy and I yelled and told her to cut it out and to stop trying to make our kids perform a grieving routine over her husband. I told her they were trying to support her and she should be proud of them for that. She started yelling back at me about what an a-hole I am, so I walked away. Am I the a-hole? I hope you guys like this video. If you did, make sure like, comment, share and subscribe the channel or posts.